Hey everybody, welcome to the Drive My Car remix listening party and Q&A. Today we're going to be answering some questions about the song, and also I'm going to be giving a walkthrough of the project track as well. Without further ado, I think we can begin. First of all, I've got a question for you. What was your writing process like for the song Drive My Car?
I didn't really have a writing process generally. So it was really, I don't even remember how it went down. But I remember like having a lot of problems just recording the vocals for it. Because it was really hard to get that vibe from my voice. So I don't know.
What's your writing process in general then for songs and such? Because I know you've got a lot of projects coming up.
I think it's more about the emotions. I don't really have like a specific thing in mind when I'm making or like when I'm producing something.
Fair enough. I guess on that note of that song as well, and this one in particular, how it was quite difficult to sing and get that tune. One thing I noticed as well whilst I was doing the remix is that it's not actually in a straight key, you know? It's not in like, it's in between two keys actually. It's kind of sort of like a microtonal version, sort of like a D-tuned thing. What was the creative choice behind that?
Okay, I'm so glad that you picked it up because like I don't think anyone else did.
Well, the thing is, I only picked it up when I started to do the remix. I was like, okay, this sounds like it's this key. And I started doing it like, that doesn't sound right. Let me put it one key lower. That doesn't sound right. Ooh, it's a microtonal version. That's interesting.
But then I have a question for you. Like, like how did you even like, put your like other stuff in it? Like, do you have to like change the key as well, or?
So with the synthesizers I had, I have the option to kind of detune them by like tiny increments. So for this one I used a Korg Minilog XD, and I just remembered kind of the detuned value, and I think with all the synth sounds I mostly just use that synthesizer, so it was quite easy then to just detune it. I had it written down on a post-it note. And then the other thing was that I had to do some backing vocal singing to this as well. But
really?
That was a bit easier because I don't have to. I just like, this sounds right. Cool. I'll press play on that. So that's kind of how that happened with that. It was a fun challenge. But yeah, thank you for that.
Wait, so, I was like listening to it like the first time you sent it to me, and I was like, I'm sure there's like some extra vocals in there, but I couldn't really like pinpoint what it was.
I can show you in a bit, definitely.
Yeah. What was your question?
Well, I guess like we can pop over to you for questions if you have, and then we can pop back to myself.
Yeah. So my questions are more of like you, like on a personal level. So I guess my first question would be, like, when did you first start thinking of doing music? Was it connected to you like creating games?
Interesting, yeah. So I've been making music before making games. Music was my first kind of creative endeavor. I started when I was very young, when I was a child. And then, at school and such, I used to play in bands and whatnot, and then when I started to get into the game development, I then started to, create music digitally using kind of MIDI software and, apps like Audacity and Reaper. And then I took a course in music production, and kind of from there just kept on making music. So it's been a consistent from an early age. I'd say that.
Well, that's cool. Like, how old are you?
Yeah, I think it's been about 20 years since I've been involved with music, probably a bit more. So it's I've been involved for most of my life.
Wow, like since like you were a teenager?
No, since I was a child, like not even a teenager. So like, when I was single digits, I was involved in music.
Wow.
Not that I remember it.
Did you like ever have like studying like piano or whatever, like an instrument, or is it just like, you know, gradually?
Yeah, I started off learning the keyboard, so I learned that for a long time. Then I took up some guitar lessons, and then over time I just decided to stop the lessons and teach it myself. So I learned bass guitar myself, learned how to sing myself. I took that basic course in production, but then, you know, I learned from doing it myself and learning from others who were doing it as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I taught myself drums as well. I tried to teach myself
cool.
violin. I can kind of play, but the violin I have is not great. It's great for horror music. And yeah, I mean, I'm very open to learning like all sorts of instruments, but I definitely find myself really fascinated by creating sounds on like synthesizers and such. Like, you can really create really unique textures and soundscapes, and, you know, layer them with effects and such. And I have a bunch of effects pedals as well, although I didn't use any effect pedals for this song. I have used it for my previous album before, where I'll just hook up my synthesizers and microphones and stuff to like a chain of like 3 or 5 guitar pedals and just create this really washed out sound.
That's awesome. So you said that something about like singing, and you self-taught singing, but the next question that I have is like, would you be more open into showcasing your singing and your music in the future?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I've never found myself to be quite a predominant singer. I find myself definitely as a backing singer, or someone who uses their voice as an instrument. It's like on most of my songs, my voice is on it, but it doesn't feel like it. You know? It just feels like it's another part of it, you know. But it's actually no. It's always on the very high end. I do a bunch of manipulation to make my voice really crispy and really airy, but like cutting out all of the deep stuffs. And then I just kind of hold one note on it. And there are some tracks like on John Geddes' videotape where my backing vocals are a lot more prominent. But yeah, it's like I've thought about, you know, singing more and more, but it's. I think I'm definitely more of a sound architect rather than a lead vocalist.
That's so cool though. Like, I wouldn't ever like pick it up, even like I just couldn't until you explained it, which then it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you're making music, it's hard not to hum along, you know, and I wasn't very good at singing and such. Then it was just about like practice and getting used to the sound of my own voice, and, you know, hearing it, and learning how to also like use a bit of auto-tune as well, like, because that goes a long way, and like kind of the tone and of it as well. I'm not like, you know, make myself sound like a robot. It's sort of like the subtle
like
ones,
Cher.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got some more questions for you, so I can go and ask you them. So so I guess we haven't shown the video yet, but we will later on. But in this video, and also in the original video, like, there's a bunch of like archival clips and such from kind of like old films, and it seems like, you know, family wedding videos of sorts. You know, what's kind of like the choice behind them? Like, I'm curious about kind of what they meant to represent and such.
With the original one?
Yeah, so let's talk about the archival clips first of all.
Yeah. It just seemed to fit with my idea of like essentially Drive My Car. It was initially supposed to be playing with the storyline of having a tulpa, but then I wanted it to become more relatable, so it'll turn out to be a song about more relating to relationships. And it's like answering, no, not answering, but it's still wrong, like the same like question of like the bad family cycles that I'm facing related to like love and romance and whatever. And I just thought that, you know, like showing people in like the weddings. They always seem so happy, and they seem so happy on camera, but we never know like what actually happens like behind the scenes. Like, you know, like when they're just being alone, there's no cameras, and that's what I think about like a lot of couples as well, like especially online or like in real life, wherever. Like, you see them say that, oh, you know, this is how they solve their arguments, and sometimes they say that they don't even fight, and I'm just left thinking that, is that really true? Like, I don't know. It's about really just honesty and just being very vulnerable towards your partner and the whole world. Just the variations of it, and I always found that really interesting, because you can't really like ask somebody like, how's your love life and how's like your relationship, like to the point where they're really honest about it.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that vibe from it. And, like, so I know some of the old films that you've kind of taken the clips from and such, and yeah, it really suits it really well. And like even with the original video where you're singing in front of the projector of it, is like such a vibe. So like really
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And also, I guess as well, it's like, it's glad I didn't change the tempo, because then you could have used that footage for this.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's the same tempo of 107, so it's like I didn't bother speeding it up or anything like that, because I thought it was quite a nice thing to do that. And I guess on a related note,
I thought it was
go for it.
I thought it was pretty slow, to be honest, like for the original.
Yeah, well, I think it's because like the original has a drum beat throughout, whereas this one doesn't for quite a bit. And then because I think the drum beat in this one is more kind of spacey, more muffled, more crunchy, it just feels like it's dragging on a bit more. Like with the other one, it's sort of like a slow march, if you will, or like a ballad. And then drum beat in this one is like I don't know really. It's sort of like almost like a trip hop kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
I guess on the note of videos and such, so I guess talk to us a bit more about the actual remix video, because there's some new clips in there and whatnot.
Oh man, that was like originally filmed for like my health remix, but I didn't really like how it turned out, and it didn't really like seem to fit. So I just had that footage for like the longest time ever. It was like in 2021. Yeah. But then it seemed to really fit this remix, so I was like, yeah, why not just use it, you know?
That's fantastic. That, like, yeah, it goes to show never delete anything. Like I have a bunch of demos of songs and even videos and such that I just kind of, you know, I'm like, oh, this is quite cool. Maybe I'll use it for something. Or like, I've got my DSLR camera with a bunch of stuff that was like, you know, I took a trip to the ocean and like recorded a bunch of videos for it, and then I look back and it's like, I don't think I'd want to use this, but who knows, you know. But no, it's really awesome, especially like when the I call it like the beat drop moment happens, and then like you have that one long clip of just the running. And I thought that like that is just perfect for this. It's just because like when that hits in the song, it's just like, it's just the moment where you're supposed to just like go and just embrace things.
Yeah, when I was like editing the video, I was like, I don't even need to edit this, you know, this is just fine.
And
but there was like
yeah, I like the like chromatic aberration effect as well going on with it. Like, it feels like it's kind of like a dream, you know.
Yes, yeah, that was like the effect that I was trying to, you know, replicate. And it's also a bit of Happy Together. I don't know if you know that movie by Wong Kar-wai.
No, I'm not familiar with that one, so I'll have to watch it now. Should have done my homework.
It's about it's a gay couple, but it has like those really like slow. It's Wong Kar-wai, like kind of like videography and like the greenish vibes.
Yeah, no, it's perfect kind of vibe, perfect setting. I kind of like, it's very inspiring for me to kind of like, you know, do a whole EP of like things that kind of suit that vibe, and just like like in a sort of a kind of like liminal feel, you know, that kind of familiarity of it, of like the cities
Yeah.
and nights. There's something about that because like I
Yeah.
kind of live within London and stuff, and there's lots of times I'm walking around the city at night. You probably get the same thing in Singapore. It's just like, you know,
Yeah.
it feels kind of surreal at moments, even though like, you know, you're very familiar with it and you kind of want to walk these roads and pavements many, many times.
Yeah. But Singapore is, I don't know, it's mostly only in the city where it's like that. Like, you know, where I'm staying, it's very like foresty, all the trees are there.
Well, that's kind of like the best of both worlds, right? Like you can at least kind of have the escape of that. If anything, that's
I
quite,
think, yeah.
that kind of like boosts the creativity because like I found myself just like I'm just outside of London as well, so I don't live myself in like the heat of the city and such, but like I can go in there, you know, get inspired, kind of like have a lot of fun there, but then like
Yeah, for
retreat to
sure.
my kind of abode to create things.
Yeah, totally. I really relate to that.
Nice. I guess on a note then as well, in regards to your past projects, let's talk about your future projects. So, Tulpa Redux, that's the big news, right? The next REMIX is yesterday's news. Now it's all about that. Tell us about that.
Yes. I'm pretty sure you know who's like, you know, on it, like remixers. You know, Endless Octug, Broken Circuits, and Foster. And I really, really enjoy all of their remixes, especially just, I think, everybody, because like they give a different vibe to everything. And I've never would have like imagined that, you know, it could be done that way or this way. And it's just very unique because everybody has their own, you know, unique styles, and it really shows. And I love that.
Yeah, there's something about remixes and such. Like some people are like, look at remix like releases and just kind of go, oh, I don't really care about that. But like, you know, it's actually like if you really give yourself into them, it's really, really interesting to see kind of, you know, how something like the original is kind of changed or twisted or even just kind of made completely different. And like, yeah, I like a lot of the songs on the original Tulpa release, like, you know, I kind of wanted to remix a lot of them actually, because I thought they were just great with that. They had this kind of you know, thing about it where in their current form, this like, you know, they're really great, but then, you know, I could take it and like make it my own version. Like I think like I had to pick Drive My Car because like I think one, it was my favorite song from the original Tulpa release, and you know, I'm a piano sucker, and like there's a piano in there and stuff, and I just thought like, you know, if it had to be a more bittersweet song that I can put my ambient walls of sound to, it would be Drive My Car, and I would keep that piano part in.
Yeah, it definitely fits you so much. Like it definitely does.
So yeah, do you have any other questions to share?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what was like your first video game ever?
So making video games,
as in,
or playing them, or both?
Playing them.
Yeah,
and like,
okay. I think
what really inspired you?
Yeah, well, with music and such, or just in general with creativity and such.
I guess in general.
I don't really remember the first video game I played. Like the first console I owned was like a Game Boy Advance and such. So like, you know, I have a lot of like I'm a big sucker for like the Pokemon games, you know. But I think it was the Legend of Zelda series that really took me, like just and like the whole world and the story and everything, and the one that really kind of showed me like that Legend of Zelda, especially Ocarina of Time, like, you know, music's a big deal with it. So it was like, it goes to show like, oh, you know, it's not just like a 5-second loop. I mean, at some point it is in Zelda, but like, you know, it plays a bigger part. And then I think it wasn't until I played Kingdom Hearts was when I realized, wow, music can be beautiful within a game. And like it that was like one time where I was just like, I ended up listening to the music on that more than maybe playing it, and then it was the first songs in addition to Zelda at the time where I went away and decided to like learn them as well, and like that kind of really sparked the more kind of that side, like the meshing of games and music. Like I was doing that way before I was making games as well. If anything, I think that was probably a good trigger into it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, that totally fits you so much, and like your music. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you could see. Well, where do you think the depressing piano comes from?
I really like Sanctuary. I never played Kingdom Hearts before, but I really like that song. Yeah, so my other question would be, do you think you return to making like, the chippy game music again, like for your releases, like your first EP?
So I've thought about it long and hard. It's definitely hard to kind of make game music now. I am working on something behind the scenes that's kind of been on and off for a while. So hopefully that comes to light soon. And like, I have so many game ideas and projects and such. What I might do is just, rather than try to make a game soundtrack and such, I might try to make kind of a soundtrack for a game that doesn't exist, like so some people will make projects that are based around kind of,
Yeah,
a virtual world, an inspirational world, an imaginatory kind of experience, and well, maybe I could do that. I've been playing a lot of cyberpunk lately, and I write a lot of kind of futuristic stories. Sci-fi is kind of my bread and butter, and and I have a bunch of synthesizers, so Blade Runner soundtrack and all that kind of stuff, fantastic. So I might. When I say I might, it's probably definitely going to happen at some point in my life, but kind of do a sci-fi soundtrack, just like, story or game that doesn't exist.
Okay. Could you share a little bit more about like what you've been doing? Like what did you say just now, like the behind the scenes thing?
Yeah, so I've there's this one project called Eldritchvania, which is made by a couple of friends, and so it's kind of been on and off for a while, but it's sort of like a Metroidvania platformer game in which kind of, you're an explorer that descends into kind of like this eldritch kind of, I don't know, adventure, I guess. And so it's meant to be, it's not meant to be like super scary and stuff, but in a way it's like, so like for me it's like sort of like, if you've ever played something like Ghouls and Goblins or something like that, it's sort of like a game like that. So I'm just trying to kind of like, in my free time, create sounds for that and such. I think I want to ramp up with it now as the project's coming to a close. There's that, and then I think I've made a bunch of soundtracks for games and stuff before. I don't put them on my Spotify, but you can, if you look on my Bandcamp, I've got a archive of my video game music, volumes 1 and 2, which is basically like selects from games that I've made or made soundtracks to, and just enjoyed a lot, because it took up a lot of my life, like between like, I don't know, like 2010s, that kind of time. How about yourself? Are you thinking about making music for alternative mediums and such?
Man, I've thought of it, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that right now. Yes, I was also wondering, like, I took a peek. I think I watched the whole thing for the film that it's a short film called Draw. Oh, and then you produce like the music for it. Like, how was the process like? Like, did you meet up with the director?
Yeah. So I've done quite a few soundtracks, and in fact I've got an album coming out next month just for another film soundtrack called Lifts, which is going to be pretty cool. But yeah, Draw, I haven't posted that one track anyway. It's called Ethereal Imitation is what the name of the sound this is called, and I wanted to make a long version of it. But with this one, it was like a short film, and they wanted like a song for the end, for like the crescendo at the end, which kind of leads into kind of this kind of, I don't know, sort of like a dream, like beautiful kind of conclusion. or a somewhat kind of like eerie kind of premise.
Yep.
So I just kind of, went into that, tried to make something sounding, really lush, really like, I don't know, just something really happy and like feeling like just a release of emotion. So I kind of like made the song, like I got the brief and I got some rough kind of clips, and then in my program I use, which is Logic, you can put in clips and score to it as well, so it's quite helpful for that. And although it wasn't locked in and I hadn't got any feedback for it, I kind of wrote like what would be my dream interpretation of the soundtrack to this. And then, I'd do that, I'd bounce it, put it to the video, send it to the director and go like, what do you think? And then there's like a back and forth with that, so kind of like refining down on it, and like when the clip kind of gets more and more locked into place and then eventually locked in, then it's like, yeah. So I think like the original one kind of like went on for a lot more. In fact, I could probably play it on here as well. In fact, yeah, actually, I can actually. There's a bot here. Yeah, the final one was cut down a lot, and then in the end it was yeah, it was just a really nice conclusion for it. I used my microcosm pedal for that one. I'd recently acquired it at the time, and it's a really lovely ambient pedal that just kind of makes just anything sound amazing. And it like there's loads of little like sprinkly bits on top in that one, and it's just like that's the microcosm doing its thing with that.
Okay.
And again, it also features like a lot of like the backing vocals and stuff. So here is the walkthrough of the Drive My Car project in Logic. This was not captured live during the Q&A due to some technical difficulties, but I'm going to walk through and explain what I explained during the session. So goneMUNE's original track consisted of a drums track, a vocal track, 2 kind of harmony tracks, a piano track, and a strings track. The only track I didn't use in this remix is the drums track. As you can see, it's been muted here. In addition as well, you'll see that kind of the song's length is actually pretty much double the original track's length, as this was the original stem for the track here. This is because I added a bridge section, which is completely my own thing, and then also repeated the chorus as well as like a small outro as well. When it comes to what I did with the vocals, with the main one, not much. I just kind of made it crispier, added a bunch of reverb and delay, so it sounds quite ethereal. Additional with the harmony as well, same thing, just made it quieter. Additionally, there's the I'm Terrified sample plays quite a lot in this track, so you'll hear it like kind of used throughout here. When it comes to what I did with the piano sample, the piano sample has been heavily modified so that basically all of the low end is gone. So for reference, this is what the original track sounds like. So the biggest thing was that, this EQ is pretty aggressive on here, where I removed all of this basically, so it sounds like this. And then I kind of swapped it in some dynamics and reverb stuff here, so it sounds like this. I'm only really interested in capturing the high notes here, so you can barely hear the bass note on this one, and that's quite all right. The reason I did this is because I really like this piano sound, and it's heard throughout the whole song. As you can see here, like I've looped it around, and it just keeps on going. And in a way, because it's such a central driver in the old song, the new take on this now makes it more of a kind of a distant memory of what once was. The strings track, on the other hand, was been turned into basically a, just ambient noise, really. So original one sounds like this, really. So just like a droning string sample. So what I've done here is just similar to the piano here, cut out the low end, and then plastered it in. Oh nope, I'm actually looking at the wrong one. I'm just looking at the piano here. So this is what it originally sounded like. There we go. So what I did here now is I cut out not just the low end but the high end as well, so it's very filtered. And then kind of added some reverb to this as well. Oops. And some distortion as well, as you saw there. So that's kind of what I did with the original tracks, and they're basically present throughout here like that. Volume kind of goes up and down a little bit. Sometimes I kind of cut it there, make it more distant and reverb and such. I'll go into it in a minute in there. But let's talk a bit about some of the new stuff I added here. So before jumping into that, I noticed that everything in this is detuned. So all the instruments that I had to record here have been done detuned. So the vocal stuff was the easiest. I just had to sing in the right key here. For the synthesizers, I used goneMUNE Log XD, and I could detune it by a certain amount each time, so that was quite easy to do once I'd got that number down. Later on though, there was an electric guitar and bass guitar. That was a bit harder to get down right, but it basically just came down to kind of just playing the note and subtly detuning it until it sounded right. So the first new instrument that kind of comes in is this kind of intro outro pad. So this is, well, this is it's in its name. It plays in during the intro and the outro, and it's very much a kind of like a soft noise just to kind of make some more depth to these sections. This is totally improvisation and such, and just kind of adds. Then my vocal tracks here, they're very, very subtle. You will not really hear them at all, but they're meant to kind of add that harmony to the really high end of it. So I don't know if you can hear it, but what I'll do is they're repeated later on, so this is what it sounds like at a higher volume. Just adds a bit more fullness to the vocal mix. So once this intro section's over, it kind of goes into the chorus, where this is where everything starts to feel a bit more fuller here. And so there's two new tracks. There's three actually new tracks. There's a few other instrumentation that gets added to it as well. This is what it sounds like. So you can probably hear that, there's a bass going on, and this is a sub bass here. It's a very simple one, there's a bit of reverb in it just to kind of add some room stuff, but it's very, very filtered here because I want it to be subtle. I don't want it to be sharp, because that comes in later when the bass guitar comes in. There's a subtle bit of portamento on this, and that's just to create the whole dreamy vibe, of just kind of floating along. There's also another kind of ambience here. This is called ARP ambience because it started off as an arpeggiator and then it became full-on ambience. So this is what it sounds like. big wall of sound. You can maybe make out what the original arpeggiator was, but this is kind of what it sounded like before I turned it into the the ambience. So this is present in just the chorus sections here. The original version of this track actually made use of, went heavily with this arpeggiator. So if I turn on the sub bass, the ambience, and some of the vocals, you can hear kind of like what the original version of this was meant to sound like. In the end, I decided to go for a more ambient wall of sound kind of feel for it, because that just kind of sounded a lot better, coupled with everything else. Lastly, there's an electric guitar that plays here. There's two of them, because one is about hitting notes and sustaining them, and one is just kind of like, shoegazy noise. So this one just sounds very simple. Just notes. They sound a bit weird, but you don't really hear the weirdness when it comes with the rest of the mix. Then you've got this kind of shoegazy fade in. Coupled all together, sounds like this. So right before it hits the bridge, which is sort of like the beat drop in this case, there is a kind of fade out of the bass here, as you can see. So it does, and that's one of the only fade outs. There's a stop on the guitar, but as it's quite a shoegazy kind of sound, it does tail off for a bit longer. But as the sub bass is the only deep kind of instrument, because bear in mind the strings and the piano, they have their low end cut out. It's just that one thing to note here, that you can see that the strings start off quite muffled and then they kind of open up in this chorus bit here, so they sounds like a lot more full in this case. This is kind of like, this song is one big crescendo of sound, so it's kind of like you just all about these subtle things kind of building up. So yeah, going into the bridge, this is all original stuff, as I've said at the beginning. You can see lots of chopped up samples here and stuff, and even like this weird pause at the end. As you can see, this is done from this "I'm Terrified" vocal, and it's basically a repeat of that. In the original version of the song, the "I'm Terrified" vocal actually does come here, like right after this vocal part. But the funny thing about this sample, is that it's, it repeats twice. So it kind of leads on perfectly into here. But as you can see then, because it's like, it starts here, it's kind of offset by 2. And I mean, I could always just, cut it and, make it perfect. But when it came to laying these all out nicely, I ended up with one more. And it was quite a nice little kind of pause before hitting the main chorus, so that's why I kind of kept that in. This part introduces a lot more instruments, most notably a bass guitar and drums at this point. So much like that whole building up, that crescendo of sound, the bass gets louder in this. This is where you're supposed to get more bassier and stuff. There's a lot more stuff going on. This is what it sounds like after this drop. This is my favorite part of the song. the drums, the bass guitar really make it. As I said before, like these all have to be G tuned. This is what the bass guitar sounds like, coupled with the electric guitar. Coupled with the sub bass and the drums. Yeah, really good stuff. Really nice crunchy stuff. The drums are pretty simple. They're the same tempo of the old song, but rather than going for that, slow ballad march feel, it's just like a very basic 4 on the floor. Yeah, lots of like compression kind of going on and really getting that crunchy sound. This cymbal kind of sound really adds to it as well, just to kind of add like whole really crunchiness to it. Later on, a hi-hat's introduced. This is like it comes in when the this "You Can Drive My Car" bit kind of comes back into it. It's great because this is like this "I'm Terrified" vocal is actually you can see it do that. You can see the high end is kind of like trimmed out a little bit, but with this part it's not. It's because this is like the main vocal basically. As this comes in right with the hi-hat as well, it's hard to hear the hi-hat coming in, especially with that cymbal as well, but when the vocals kind of quiet away, you can then actually hear like, oh yeah, the hi-hats have been added now, this part, and it just kind of like like I say, adds to that whole building up to something. And what you hear there is like the only drum fill of it. It's basically just very basic tom drum, sort of like out of an 80s drum kit here. That's basically that. They're cheesy, but I think they fit in really well here. You've got a distant "You Can Drive My Car" as well. Just adds to the whole part of this, just kind of like rather than just kind of keeping it empty, just makes it feel a lot more full, but also doesn't kind of make it too muddy. Then the next thing that kind of builds up here is like my favorite part of my favorite section, which is the "You Can Drive My Car." And then it kind of goes into like this next lyric, and then it kind of goes back to it there. It sounds like this. One thing I had to do here, just to give that more room, is I actually push this back here, so you can see this is like "You can drive my car, you can drive my car," but this is "You can drive my car, you can drive my car," like that instead now. So here's the subtle difference between that. Now, and then for this one it goes. Yeah, just giving that little bit of room for this part here to come in. And the one part that plays during this is on another electric guitar. It's really, really subtle, but it just amplifies this whole prominence of this section here. And it's basically like a taboo in my world to like do not play what the vocal is playing, like don't do the drums to it, don't do guitars to it, don't do anything to it. But if done well, like it can really, really amplify certain parts of the song. So in this case it just plays. Played along with that vocal, it sounds like this. I'm shaking, I'm hurt. You can drive my car, you can drive. I'm shaking, I'm hurt. And then comes the pause, which is basically a sudden cut out of the strings and the hi-hat and the bass stopping as well. The sub bass is there, but it's like started to fade out. But it does cut out for like one bar here. That one there, which is quite nice, because that's when the snare comes in as well. So it's kind of like the snare kind of just is like a reset. So this part is the last chorus, you know, basically what the song has been building up to. It's very similar to this first one. But it's got a lot more going on when it comes to the bass and the percussion side of it. It's basically the same electric guitar stuff, the same synth ambient stuff, the same kind of vocal stuff up until kind of this second part and the last part. But yeah, you don't want to make it too kind of complex here. The hi-hats is slightly different to that, but it's still like playing at the same kind of rhythm, the same speed. Same with the cymbals that are still there. That kind of drum fill comes in later on as well as, you know, that shoegaziness. But the fade in on that is a lot more kind of immediate rather than the very, very, very slow one. There's also this part here. So this is like a third kind of vocal that goes along, which is found in the original. In the original song, this is quite prominent, and it works quite well because the original song had a lot less going on. You know, it had a drums, a piano, and strings, and then like there were like 3 vocal tracks, so it made sense for that. But because we've got all of this stuff going on in here, what I've done is I've made it a lot more kind of subtle by kind of really filtering it down. That's not the track. It's this one here. Yeah. So you can see it's not. It's. I think it's mostly done with this Saturn, where I've kind of. I think it's with this Saturn, right? Yeah, you can see. So I've kind of it basically made it sound like a radio, a speaker. And this goes quite well here because you've got this one, which are like the high end main ones, you know. Then you've got the I'm Terrified, which is sort of like a nice little like call and response style vocal stuff when things quieten down. And then you've got my vocal harmonies, which are just kind of like adds a backing to it and makes it more full. But that's very much on the high end. And then you've got this one here, which is this vocal harmony 3 that's fits in right in between. So it's like, you know, mid-range, doing its own thing. So, and it doesn't really step on anyone's toes because of that. And it's very subtle, it's very quiet, and that's a difference in my version. It's like it's just another element that's come in. One other addition as well is like there's a higher part in this vocal choir, is what I'm calling it. Just, you know, adds a bit of like finality to this last kind of couple of bars. And, you know, it just keeps on going until, you know, kind of fades out and gets back into this I'm Terrified, kind of the loud ones, and has this kind of intro-outro pad back on it. And that's my remix for Drive My Car. Hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, hope you enjoy listening to my music.